Here it is, gamers. We've got a preview for the March balance patch. A variety of things are happening. They're nerfing a lot of support builds in World vs. World because the boons, they're out of control. They added new healers. The healers were really good. They got to chop them down. We've got reworks to arcane skills. They're buffing Tempest a little bit. They're making Power Hollow hopefully pretty juiced up. Guardians can move around with Sword 3. Wow. Absolute insanity, my friends. Well of Precog gives stability now. Goodness me. Power Mirage. Didn't see that one going. We've got Power Mirage. We've got Power Harbinger. Oh, I think, yeah, people are going to get hyped about that one, I think. People are going to enjoy that. That's true. We got Power Harbinger. Thief is actually they finally remembered that Quickness Thief exists and that Deadeye exists. That's right, guys. Piercing rifle abilities. Wow. That's insane. That is just beautiful stuff, guys. That's what we like to see. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to go through it one by one. We're going to start with the least important class, guys. Elementalist. Nobody cares about Elementalist. Not even Ellie mains. Never mind the fact that most of ArenaNet staff are Ellie mains at this point. Oh, I guess first of all we should say this. Relic of the Fireworks. So basically, they actually fixed this. Some skills didn't trigger it. This was stuff like Grenade Barrage and like Greatsword 5 on Guardian. This is probably going to increase the prevalence of Relic of Fireworks on these builds and be a slight DPS increase because 7 is higher than 5. So, good news! But anyway, Elementalist. So, they talked about this a little bit on the stream. They nerfed down Fresh Air Catalyst, you know, quite a lot. And now they want to bring it back by making Water Trident a little bit better. Will that make up for the fact that some of its abilities have like 1 second durations? I don't know. Probably not. But it is what it is. Couple of the like slight buffs. They're being fairly conservative with some of this stuff. To Sword, right? So all of the Sword 2 skills are getting modified a bit, like Polaric Leap, the dash ability, cooldown's going down. The evasion, the evade, Earth 2 is also having its cooldown reduced there as well. And Rust Frenzy, similarly to Guardian Sword 3, you can also move while using it. And that's actually like a subtly powerful change there as well. This ability does hit pretty hard, actually. And the fact that you had to immobilize yourself in place, I mean, you had to kind of like combo someone into it, so you like land something and then you're able to get the Rust Frenzy going on them. But obviously, now that you can move, you can kind of like chase people around there with that stuff there as well. But yeah, that's some content there, guys. Yeah, and they also, yeah, of course, poor old Fresh Air Weaver had a bit of a tough time. You know, it suffered at the hands of the poor old Fresh Air Catalyst. Unlucky. You hate to see it. And yeah, that's also not really changing here as well, as you can clearly see. One with an interesting change here. You get super speed of 3 seconds whenever you attune to air, but it's reduced when you have the Fresh Air Troto Code. So basically, they're putting it back to normal for non-Fresh Air builds. That's what's going on there. I think the really fun thing here is the arcane changes. Definitely, a lot of Elementalist utility skills, and honestly, a lot of utility skills in general have been a little bit out of date for a long time now, to be frank, and they're trying to spice these up a little bit, and I think they'll probably do this for other utility skills down the line there as well. But check this out. So the heal skill, Arcane Brilliance, you get bonus healing when you actually blast a field. That's pretty cool, actually. Arcane Power doesn't share out Ferocity or whatever, and crit chance to everyone around you. It doesn't do that anymore. Now what it does is you just get a flat amount of Ferocity for 5 seconds. And it has a lower cooldown. I feel like this skill... I mean, I guess it's kind of hard to make these skills interesting, because right now this is basically like press button and you do more damage for 5 seconds, which is kind of a weird ability. You know, honestly, it's the most Elementalist skill of all Elementalist skills. And honestly, I feel like the Ellie mains might like it. Like, oh, I can press a button and just do more damage for 5 seconds? Yo! That's pretty big. So... I don't know. There's actually like some version of reality where this ends up being good, obviously. Like, especially if you're like a build that has a really good burst profile, which Elementalist does have a lot of the time. So maybe you can like really nuke people. Love to see the numbers, obviously. In this regard, to see how that one works out. But yeah, it's just being changed a little bit, and this is a bit of a theme here with the other arcane abilities. Arcane Wave, this is the AoE one that you can blast people with. You now leap to the target area before doing damage, so it's a mobility skill, and it will daze. 600 range compared to 900. That kind of differentiates it from Arcane Blast a bit more as well. And the radius is down to 240, which is quite small, actually. But the power coefficient is going up a fair bit. Ammunition charge recharge time is now 25 seconds in PvE only as well. So I feel like the place where you're most likely to see this exist is probably going to be PvP. A bit of a tough sell, I feel like. Like, Elementalist utilities can be pretty competitive at times, and they're often quite utility-focused. And I guess you could use this as a disengage skill, but you're going to be competing with stuff like, you know, like Lightning Flash, for example. And this is kind of like Lightning Flash, I guess, a little bit, maybe. Because it's got an offensive component as well. And, like, AoE days is always going to be pretty good. And it's going to hit pretty hard. Like, 1.7, that's quite a high number, actually, for PvP. Especially seeing as I imagine it will still be a guaranteed critical strike as well. So you get a guaranteed critical strike with a 1.7 coefficient. It's pretty decent. You know, pretty big damage there. The trait got changed as well. So instead of getting some condies whenever you use an arcane skill, now what's going to happen is that it gives them a special effect. So Arcane Brilliance gives you protection. Arcane Wave, this is the leap, will immobilize and daze targets that it strikes. Arcane Shield will give you stability, and Arcane Power will give you even more critical strike, guaranteed critical strike stacks, basically. And then Arcane Blast, that's the projectile, is going to blind enemies that it strikes. Like, this trait is weird, to be honest. They mentioned this on the live stream, and they're very much correct here. Like, and this is kind of a balance issue in and of itself, right? Like, the Arcane Grandmaster slot, especially in PvP, it's always been dominated by Evasive Arcana. The amount of utility and value you generate from that trait, so being able to heal yourself when you dodge and cleanse a condi when you're in water, burn people, blind people on dodge in air, it's such a versatile and powerful trait that it's really difficult to dislodge this. So in PvP, I'm struggling to see this, but, oh no. Who knows? Who knows, guys? You know, what do I know? I don't know anything, okay? I know nothing. I know less than nothing about this game. Yeah. But yeah, I think the loss is a meme, okay? I guess you don't get the... I wonder if you also got the ferocity, actually, when you use an arcane skill. So maybe you still got the damage increase, too, and we'll see how it goes out. But yeah, that's kind of all the stuff that happened with Elementalist. So, kind of some PvP-oriented changes. Not too much for PvE, but a couple of things for PvE here as well. So, Archimancer's Training, that's the healing modifier, the minor Grandmaster trait. Just another 5% extra healing there. That's just nice. 5% more healing is always good. That's in all game modes. Wash the Pain Away. The radius is up to 240 on the first pulse and 360 on the second pulse. There's also kind of a more streamlined thing, so you can land your really big heal, because the first heal's the biggest, more consistently. So that's going to be really nice in all game modes, obviously. And Tempest hasn't been the preferred support in PvP for a while, so definitely does, like a little nudge, I think, can be quite useful. This is some more usability, some more output is always good. Big targeted change, and this is going to be a theme. Spoiler alert, ArenaNet want to get rid of alacrity, or like high alacrity uptime in PvP and World vs. World. And you know what? They're completely correct in doing that. High alacrity uptime in competitive modes just isn't good. It accelerates the uptime you have on your defensives, on your other support abilities, on everyone else's other support abilities. It's just not really that healthy, to be honest. And yeah, a lot of classes that had alacrity in World vs. World, that's simply being removed and being turned into might. And Lucid Singularity is the first example of that, with the alacrity being might in PvP and World vs. World. I think that's good overall. Elemental Bastion gets buffed to kind of compensate that a little bit, because you don't have a lack anymore, so you heal a little bit more. Sure. Okay, yeah. Take us back, guys. Take us back to the HOT meta, where we're just covered in Heal Tempest. That's what I'm talking about, guys. That's going to be some good stuff there. Fantastic stuff. And then Bolstered Elements. This trait now causes stances to grant barrier instead of protection. So... protection instead of barrier. Like, in general, that's probably going to be a little bit better. Like, protection is... very good, as it turns out. Like, high protection uptime is very, very powerful. Wait, is that still showing like a oh, no, mind. I thought it was like still showing like the really old version of this trait, but no, it just has double effects, doesn't it? Yeah, you gain barrier when you activate a stance, and whenever you get hit really hard, you also get the free stone resonance for the barrier there as well. Yeah, but there it is. That's all the stuff for Elementalist. So again, mostly focused again around on like kind of dealing with alacrity in World versus World and reworking the arcane skills, as we can see here, which could have some ramifications for PvE, but honestly not the most exciting patch in the universe for Elementalist mains, that's for sure. But what about engineers? Look, guys, glue shot buffs. This is what I'm talking about, guys. It is glue gaming, which is going to be relevant because they are looking to push power Hollowsmith, and they're making the power coefficient on glue shot very, very high. You can use sword pistol on your engineer build, and that's definitely where they want you to go. That's for sure. And they want you to use the Mega Heat trait, right? What's it called? Like the Extended Capacity Unit, whatever it's called. I don't know what it's called, but the one that gives you 150 heat, that is what they want you to use. And you can clearly see that because look at all this stuff. Laserdisc, when you're over 100% heat, so when you're overcapped, in other words, going into that extra range that you get from the Grandmaster trait, 50% more damage on your Laserdisc. Blade Burst cooldown, that also kind of goes along with Laserdisc, obviously. That is going down to a 20-second cooldown in PvE. Nice. Wow. Big damage. Insane DPS there, guys. Power Hollow, already pretty good, actually. But with these nudges, that's also just going to simply improve it even more so. They wanted you to auto-attack less as well. So basically, the Gleam Saber, this is when you finish your auto-attack chain, it recharges your other sword skills. So that's going to be less now. And you might go, oh, wait, that's a nerf, right? Well, to kind of compensate for this, they're just baseline reducing the other cooldowns here a little bit. Pretty much to kind of compensate for that, so you're just going to end up like pressing these more, right? Like it's not really going to change that much, right? Less auto attacking, more pressing the other buttons. Very exciting. I'm not sure I'm a huge fan of that. Like I'm not really a big fan of the whole like press every button on cooldown mentality that happens with Guild Wars 2, but it is what it is. Either way, I think Power Hollow is pretty much one of the absolute favorites when it comes to PvE. So, I mean, I think people are going to be happy about that. We're going to be full of joy and wonder and fantastical gaming. You know, it's really good stuff, guys. Prismatic Converter. These are actually just 2 quality of life changes, by the way. This just says these traits will now properly activate when you don't leave Hollow Forge directly, right? Like previously, this was basically tied to the actual F5. Now it's like whenever you swap out of that as well. I changed the Mechanist. We'll go over the other stuff later. Don't worry. I haven't forgotten. Mechanical Genius. Cooldown penalty while being far away is down from 50 to 20%. I still thought they could probably increase the radius a bit. The mech AI is a bit cumbersome to deal with, especially, by the way, if you're dealing with the ranged version. The ranged version of the mech just has this tendency to get stuck away from you and kind of just ruin itself, which is a little bit annoying. But yeah, like one day they're just going to slowly reduce down the penalty for Mechanical Genius to 0%. We're nearly getting there, guys. You know, we're on our way. We're getting there. We're getting there. We absolutely are. And then we have an assortment of changes. Kind of some quality of life bug fixes here. Infusion Bomb was giving low boons. It was a very low amount of boons. Med Blast has a wider cone, so it's easier to land. That's the auto attack on Med Kit. Bandage Blast, this was a bit janky after they reworked it. They've dejanked it. Grenade Barrage activates Relic of Fireworks, so Fireworks Relic is going to be much more consistent. That's, you know, I mean, that's nice, you know, it's good stuff. Automated Medical Response, boring passive trait. Now you give regeneration to nearby allies when you use your healing skills. Tool Belt skill does compete with Overshield in this case, so probably not going to be running this on support builds realistically, but yeah, they can probably change it at a later date. Mecha Legs, this is actually a powerful trait. Actually does see a decent amount of play because it's just classic, you get more movement speed and slows don't work on you nearly as well. Now you gain resistance on dodging, so that gives you complete immunity to any kind of impairing effect, which is pretty interesting. I guess the only thing is that I guess you can't remove Immobilize from yourself or make it invalid because you can't dodge while you're immobilized to get the resistance. But in general, I feel like this ends up making it better. Like the baseline movement speed is a bit of a feels bad, of course. But again, you're going to have swiftness pretty much all the time, or at least, you know, super speed and stuff like that when you're playing engineer in competitive. And you also have the ability to use your leap to leap. You can use your Hollow Forge 2 to break out of all snares and stuff like that. But anyway, that's how that one works. And then Bunker Down. This trait now disables when triggering, disabling an enemy, so when critically striking. They actually mentioned this specifically. They want to make this a little bit less consistent. In other words, like you could just keep proccing it again and again for free and make it a little bit more active. The mine spawns near the player. That is actually quite funny. So like when you stun someone, you like throw a mine out at them and they have to try and not tread on it pretty much. And it does a bit more damage. And of course, it cleanses a Condi and it heals more. You're going to activate it less. So as a result of that, you don't get as many activities. You don't get as many procs. But there it is. But again, fairly minor stuff I want to say here. Like, they're buffing Rifle NG in PvP. I don't think there are any rifle builds that are really existing in PvP right now. It's very much, a lot of builds are kind of centered around shield or hammer. And that's kind of like NG in a nutshell, to be honest. Like, sword is pretty big. Like, hammer is obviously pretty big. Not sure about Rifle right now, but I think we'll do like Rifle. Like, it's one of the fan favorites, I feel like, for NG, so just trying to bring some power back into the game here a little bit with that Rifle. But again, fairly minor stuff with NG. Power Hollow getting buffed up pretty nicely. Couple of bud fixes here and there. We love to see it, guys. Moving on to Guardian. It is Guardian time. Here's where the content begins. Zealot's Defense, sword number 3. You can move while using sword 3, and the projectiles don't get stuck. This is actually a bit of a theme. They did this on a lot of the new weapons too, like the Thief Axes and the Necromancer auto attack. Look that they kind of went for this, and they tried to generally improve projectiles, I think, which is kind of interesting to see, and also pretty good because projectiles can be pretty weird sometimes. It's a nice quality of life. Like, I think on PvE builds for Guardian especially, you can really get animation locked a lot. It's one of the pain points of that build, I want to say. So basically reducing the amount of that is always nice. I think there's a couple of builds that could probably benefit from this, because I think stuff like this is why you end up with low play rates on certain builds. It's not because they're bad, it's because they can feel really unfun to play sometimes, and like a little bit frustrating to deal with when you have this many animation locks. It can really slow you down and chain you. You can be shackled to your own build. So nice change, good quality of life to have that for our wonderful dragon hunters, or, well, anyone who uses sword main hand to DPS, I guess. Feel My Wrath. You gave super speed in addition to quickness and fury. Very kind of cool for PvE, to be honest. This means that Firebrand, support Firebrand, or any other kind of support Guardian build, or if you just take this, for example, as a utility skill, like you might take this on even on a DPS build, right? Just to have that utility, because, you know, elite skill on Guardian is not always, it's quite flexible, actually. You know, they're kind of situational, so you can definitely fit this into a lot of Guardian builds pretty easily. And now you give super speed as well, which is a really powerful effect, and that's nice to have on a heal Firebrand. That's something it couldn't do before, and if you think about it, it's kind of fair, right? Because Guardian used to be kind of the king of stability, not really anymore. So now it's given away its special power. It's kind of borrowing a couple of things from other classes too, like the super speed. So I think this is pretty interesting. It's a very stacked ability, though, pretty weird. It's got quickness, fury, and super speed, so a lot going on there at the same time. But you can definitely hold it. Like, you'll have over 100% uptime, so you can definitely delay this a little bit if you know you're going to need the super speed at some point to use situationally for your team. And that's 600 radius super speed too, which is quite nice, because of course that is a shout. This is a PvE thing, though. Like, realistically, you are going to want the Stunbreak Mantra or on Firebrand a lot of the time, or you're going to want Renewed Focus for Guardian in competitive modes, because, oh boy, Renewed Focus is one hell of an ability. Invuln and resets all of your really powerful cooldowns. Yeah, quite difficult to compete with that, let me tell you that. Pretty good stuff. Vigorous Precision. This is whenever you land a crit, you got Vigor, and there's no ICD, and it's whenever you dodge, you're going to get some Vigor as well, but the duration is going down. This is a bit of a theme. It looks like ArenaNet want to move away from procs. So in other words, on crit, this happens. And there's a lot of changes here that mirror this. We'll see some more later on, and we've already seen some, of course, right, previously. I feel like we might actually see a lot of the random procs on traits just being removed and changed into something else, which I think is fine, to be honest. Like, realistically, a lot of this stuff, you're going to assume you have it up all of the time anyway with stuff like this, because crits are so common that you do, right? So the random component is kind of pointless on a lot of these traits, so that kind of makes sense to me. But yeah, that's how it is. This trait it's probably going to be basically the same. I guess maybe even slightly better, because you've got no internal cooldown now, so you can get your vigor uptime, in there pretty easily, which I guess could potentially translate into some survivability improvements as well, right? Like, high vigor uptime is one of the best things you can have in PvP game modes. Although you kind of already you would already have a lot of vigor in PvP anyway, right? And this is a bit of a nothing change, to be honest, in terms of like how it's going to work. You're going to have it anyway. Focus Mastery. Protection from this trait will now apply when Shield of Wrath expires instead of when it activates. This is just like a bug fix. I feel like this is one of the least commonly used traits in the entire game, and it's going to remain that way. Redemption. Increase the duration of Lesser Litany of Wrath from 3 to 4 seconds. So this is the talent that when you activate it, the trait. When you activate it, you get a little mini Litany of Wrath, which is an incredibly powerful effect. overall. What does this actually compete with? I need to quickly check. I think it's in Radiance, right? No, it's in Valor, actually. Oh, yeah. This is the one... Yeah, this is like the protection thing that got reworked, right? Yeah. They removed that AoE prop thing, and they added this to it instead. But then you're going to have to give up... Well, it's a little bit tricky to kind of fit this into your build, isn't it? There's some pretty good stuff in there, actually. But on the other hand, I don't know, maybe on like a Core Guardian build, you could make this work, actually. Some kind of like crazy... Core Guard build, like the good old days of teleporting onto people and one-shotting people with hammers. You get your third skill going, and you get some really big damage and heal yourself up pretty effectively. I can definitely see that happening. The kind of the Monk's Focus Guardian Judge's Intervention build. I imagine that definitely still works. It's kind of superseded by elite specialization builds that exist, but it is a bit of a theme, actually. Like ArenaNet have been looking to kind of improve some of the core builds and make like core a thing in PvP, which does make a lot of sense, right? Because they aren't doing elite specializations right now, and if they want new players to be able to have a go at PvP, you want to make sure that there are some good core builds that exist so that those players aren't just going to get completely obliterated by people who have the expansions or have the expansions that have elite specializations attached to them. Glacial Heart. This trait no longer chills and damages enemies that you disable, and instead heals the user when disabling, immobilizing, or chilling an enemy. And of course, it will chill when you land your hammer too, as well. So it's gonna feed into itself there. Pretty interesting, actually, in this regard. So basically, just a bit of free sustain on Guardian builds that want to use hammer here. It's a pretty competitive trait slot, though. Like, in particular, when I'm thinking about competitive modes, this is the AoE cleanse on your F2, and that is a very, 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 very good trait to have, because it already augments a very powerful, the ability F2 already cleanses anyway on Core Guardian, and then if you take that, it cleanses even more, and it will also support your allies, actually. So, more of like a more selfish option, in a way, and a little bit less Condi cleanse. But I'm not sure if this really necessarily makes it more competitive. Maybe like a little bit more, because having some sustain versus like a little bit more shutdown, a little bit more snare. It's definitely a side grade here for sure. But again, I kind of struggle to see it getting taken in a lot of situations. I feel like it's most likely to be taken in PvE almost, right? Like purely because the other options aren't super attractive in PvE. In fact, you usually take this in PvE just for like the little bit of extra damage, right? But yeah, it's a bit tricky. Oh yeah, and it's the 10% on Virtue one, isn't it? Whenever you use a Virtue, you get 10% damage. So that's like really tricky to justify this, to be honest, because it's got some really, really stiff competition to take this. Yeah, you took this in PvE before they made the Virtue one do 10%, but then you take the Virtue one because you get more damage with that one. But yeah, kind of good defensive option there, right? Like if you want to heal yourself. Honestly, I could see this being really good for sustain in PvE. Like, funnily enough, like Guardian sustain in PvE is sometimes a little bit mediocre. Self-sustain can be a bit mediocre sometimes compared to some of the other DPS options. So you could maybe take this if you need to heal yourself a little bit. Depends on the numbers, though, obviously. Anyway, after we got distracted by Glacial Heart, it's time for Willbender. You now get access to Repose as long as you can complete the skill, even if you do not unroll 5 hits. Yeah, this was like a really hard requirement, man. Like, you had Flash Combo, and you had to land all of them, right? In order to... in order to actually activate this ability that then teleports you back. So now you always get it. So this is kind of a cool skill. This is like a very in and out thing, right? Like you're going to be able to go in with the flash combo, boom, and then get out immediately. And I think ArenaNet is probably seeing this as kind of an alternative for Willbender, against something like Judge's Intervention, right? But even more evasive, right? Allowing a Willbender to kind of go in and go out a little bit. Almost leaning into a more thief-oriented playstyle, right? Like, and I think that would be really cool to see, actually. Like, if Willbender could end up being a little bit like Thief, that could be pretty interesting. Like, Thief has always been this thing in PvP that has had basically no competition. Like, nothing is a Thief, really. You could argue that maybe some eras of the Mesmer in PvP, right, were a little bit thiefy, especially when you had Portal about the place, kind of like really very rotational-oriented class. Could be cool if there was something like Willbender that was kind of leaning into this like very evasive playstyle that kind of goes in, blasts you, then gets out, very squishy, kind of glass canny. And abilities like this kind of like lean into that as well. And this ability is very similar to Shadow Step, right? If you think about it, right? Shadow Step, you teleport, and then when you teleport back, it will stun break you, and you are able to you're able to remove colonies from yourself, right? And this is exactly what this ability is going to do. This skill now heals and removes conditions from you after shadow stepping back to your original position. Roiling light, in fact. Reduce the roll duration from 0.75 to 0.5 seconds. The roll distance is unchanged. So just a little bit snappier on this ability. This is the stun break, of course. So just like a little bit snappier. Allows you to connect the... I guess it allows you to connect the stun a little bit more, right, as well. So you can roll out, then boom, roll back in again. Just tightening up Willbender a little bit. Here's the really fun one, though. And man, you know, it really sucks that Renewed Focus is so good, right? Because I feel like Renewed Focus is just not going to be able to yield against some of these skills. But check this out. Heaven's Palm. The skill now evades attacks and finishes your targeted foe if they're down and no other enemies are nearby. So if you've kind of finished someone off and they're isolated, you can like, bam, leap on them with Heaven's Palm and just like annihilate them. Just finish them off. I actually think abilities like this are actually quite good for the game. I think Stomp abilities existing is good in a universe where you have res abilities, right? Because right now it's almost a bit one-sided, right? Like you have revive abilities, but there aren't really stomp abilities that exist. You had warrior for a time that did actually utilize war banner to both revive allies and stomp enemies, which I think is pretty good. Like I think you want to be able to finish off people, especially when you have like a lot of revive power, a lot of like instant revivals that you can use. On support builds in particular. So I think having kind of like an opposite number to that is actually pretty important. Will this be good? I really struggle to see it because like without Renewed Focus, like you're so vulnerable. You're just such a... Guardian is just quite reliant on that skill in general, which is kind of another can of worms that you could really delve into, to be honest. And finally, oh, this is such a fun meme skill, but they de-memed it. Look at this. Deathless Courage. This was the one that says you can't die, right, while your courage is up, right? Like you hit your courage whenever you kill foes, it extends it up to a certain point, but you can't die while you have this. Really fun RP, but ain't it the fun police? They're here to shut us down. This trait no longer removes Aegis from Courage, reduces the duration of Courage, or causes enemy deaths to increase the duration of Courage. This trait now grants the Guardian strike damage and condition damage reduction while Courage is active. It actually doesn't say that it doesn't say that it doesn't prevent you from going downstate, actually. Funnily enough. But I think it isn't going to. I'm pretty sure what they mean here is that the effect has been completely replaced. So you don't get extra courage. It doesn't remove the Aegis, though, so you still get the Aegis at least. Because honestly, yeah, they did this weird thing where all of the Grand Master traits on Willbender, like, removed something and made your F skills worse, but also made them better in another way. The whole trade-off thing was in play on Willbender a lot, and it just was not fun. It was, like, really, really unenjoyable to deal with. It was, like, a huge Phil's Badman, but... yeah, it is what it is, okay? And I think they just wanted to make this... I think they wanted to make this ability a little bit less niche. I think ArenaNet's got to be a little bit careful here if you're going to sacrifice flavor to make something almost like a bit more standardized so it can... you know, a bit more standardized so it can fit into more builds, because something like this is always going to be incredibly niche, right? This is a very niche effect a lot of the time. And also the other options are actually pretty solid, to be honest. The other Grandmasters. So that this is going to probably nudge it in the other direction, right? So while you've got your courage up, you're going to be taking, I assume, significantly less damage. I could see it being like 25%, maybe even more than that. Maybe even like 33%. So like double prot, basically. Like prot, and then you can combo with that resolution, and you can combo with protection again, which is going to make you very durable. Like effects like this can definitely be very powerful if you want to be a more durable, tanky-oriented style of build. And now, honestly, we've got through the warm-up changes. I actually did read these. I did pre-read these. I pre-read everything. But I kind of forgot they were very chill. Like, a lot of these changes, these are just like, oh, what a lovely, relaxing balance patch. Oh, Power Hollow's a little bit better. Oh, wow, isn't that nice? Oh, look at this. You know, we made Heal Tempest, heal 5% more. Didn't buff the boon radii for PvE, but, you know, You heal for 5% more now. Wow, isn't that comfortable? Isn't that lovely? But now we're getting to the real stuff, guys. Now we're getting to the real changes. Here we go. World versus World. Mesmer getting the hammer. Null field. Reduce the field duration from 5 to 2 seconds in World versus World only. Reduce the number of pulses from 6 to 3. Whoa. Okay. Oh, no. That is a brutal nerf. Of course, a very powerful skill. A complete, you know... it is like one of the quintessential World versus World skills. It removes boons. It clears condies from your team. And all of that with a ranged package as well, and a pretty damn short cooldown. All of that at the same time. This is a pretty insane skill. And wow, it is basically getting nuked, pretty much. And I think that they want to really tone down support in general. We're going to see a lot of nerfs to supports across the board. We see Mantra of Concentration is getting nerfed, a less stability, more cooldown on this, so you can't rechannel it as often to, again, give that Aegis and stability out. You're not going to be able to spam charges as much. The stability duration on the actual Mantra itself is under 3 seconds from 5. Big nerf there, actually. The stab up time on this was really, really high. Don't worry, this is World vs. World, and it's still really high in PvE. On that one. Chaos Aura duration down, so way less boon spam, because of course the Chaos Aura, whenever you get hit, you get random boons, which inflates the, you know, the boon count and makes it harder to deal with boon strips and so on, right? Temporal Enchanter, no more increased duration on Glamour skills. Guess what? That includes Null Field, so that is going down as well. You're still getting the super speed, of course, and you're still getting the resistance. Sympathetic Visage, less Condi Cleanse whenever you summon a Phantasm, so less cleanse. You are getting some stability back on Will of Precog, but you're going to have to commit a second utility skill. And again, this is an intelligent change, by the way. In PvE, you can definitely get away with this on the Heal Chrono build. Your util skills are really flexible. So, and honestly, you won't need to. Like, Mantra's still good, but you definitely could. But in World versus World, you do not want to be committing 2 utility skills to stability. You really don't. Like, Mesmer utility skills are just godlike in World versus World. You've got Illusion of Life, you've got Veil, you've got Portal, right? Of course, guess what? You've got Null Field, right? Like, all these really, really powerful tools. You're not going to want to commit 2 of them to just giving stability. Especially seeing as, like, the radius on this is, you know, it's not going to be trivial to land this, right? And you won't get full value out of it because it's a well. Nice for PvE, though. What this means is that Chrono now basically has stability and Aegis in one button. Ooh, spicy. So that's kind of exciting for the support Chrono build. And actually, any Boon Chrono build, like Boon Chrono can definitely slide this into the build pretty easily and get a 2-for-1 deal, which is really, really nice as well. But yeah, double Chrono, still pretty nifty. Most notably, they haven't removed Alacrity from Chrono in World versus World, and the reason for that is because they'd have to fundamentally change the Grandmaster traits to do that, so it's still going to be there. It's going to be one of the more reliable ways that you can still give yourself a little bit of Alacrity in World versus World. Wouldn't be surprised to see them actually hack away at the duration if it remains an issue. If people do start running, like, degen double Chrono comps, because people are running Chrono a lot right now. Like, I've been told that, you know, Chrono's even replacing Guardian in some situations in a lot of these groups, because it just gives stability and it has all of that utility packaged so well. You've got the cleanse, you've got the stab, you've got the boon application, you've got the utility. It's really, really powerful. You've got resistance, you've got super speed, you've got it all, right? You really do. So if people do start running, like, really crazy, like, degen, double Chrono, or just, like, spamming Chronos all over the place, they'll definitely look at this and they'll probably hack away at the Alacrity. They'll probably target some of the boon output as well, maybe a little bit more, even after some of the nerfs to Chaotic Transference here as well. But I think the Chaos Aura was definitely a big part of it, alongside the stability uptime, right? Like, stability uptime is king in World versus World, and dealing with that by increasing the cooldown of Mantra of Concentration and reducing the duration, I think is pretty important to do. So I think these are some very solid changes overall for the World versus World perspective. Master Fencer, you're now going to give personal Fury duration increase on yourself. Basically, this used to give self-fury pretty much all the time, and now it's going to do that again. Kind of a PvP thing, I want to say. This is just, of course, a minor trait, right? And this is going to be just, basically, you're going to get permanent fury for having dueling on any Mesmer build. Wow. Exciting. And this is a pretty good trait as well. Like, any trait like this is surprisingly valuable. Like, any DPS build that shares Furia around it's actually pretty cool. You'd be surprised how valuable that is in PvE, by the way, and certainly in competitive. Like, Fury is really good in these competitive modes too. Like, 25% crit is always juiced, my friends. Absolutely juiced. And yeah, also Desperate Decoy. This trait is going to give Vigor when you evade as well. So that's pretty damn big for any Mesmer build. So this is like Power Mesmer in PvP, and of course Power Mesmer in PvE as well. You're going to get that Fury, although the Fury is kind of irrelevant in PvE. But in PvP, pretty nifty, right? Because, of course, Vigor uptime, really powerful for, especially Mirage, I guess, like Power Mirage. And I feel like that's like the least obnoxious version of Mirage that's existed. So, hey, who knows? Maybe it's time for that to come back, guys. 2 dodges, maybe that's enough. And I think it's good to see some kind of more aggressive builds. Like, I feel like there haven't been builds like Power Mirage or like Fresh Air Ellie in the meta for ages. Like, when was the last time we had stuff like that? I guess like Soul Beast, right? Soul Beast was kind of like that, and Untamed a little bit like that. It could very hypermobile, kind of super aggressive builds that would just nuke you. But I feel like we haven't had something that's as extreme as Mirage for a long time, actually. And like these changes are definitely going to help it out with that. Like one of the most important things in PvP is Fury uptime for power builds. Like you need to be able to have consistent damage, and that critical strike chance is going to be important there as well. And I've got good news for you guys. I have got good news. Check this out. Okay, check this out. Power Mirage in PvE. Like, this is actually cool. Do you know why this is cool, guys? I'll tell you why this is cool. Because this is actually one of the few builds. I might make a video about this. Yeah, you better subscribe for that, guys. I'm spoiling the next video in this video. I'm a pro YouTuber. Like, Power Mirage is one of the very few builds that actually doesn't exist. Like, I would encourage everyone to think about this. Almost every build in this game kind of works. You can basically take any weapon you want on any profession and any elite spec, and you can make something that kind of works in PvE, mostly kind of a little bit. Power Mirage is actually one of the very few things that just doesn't really work and hasn't historically worked in PvE. And honestly, they're going hard. They're making it happen. So Phantom Razor, this is the Dagger ambush skill. That's going up. Split Surge, that's the Greatsword ambush skill. Mirage Thrust, and this is the big one. Mirage Thrust is going up to 3.0 power scaling in PvE. Of course, Split Surge is like, I think that's the power coefficient is 3 times over, right? Because it hits 3 times. So that's also pretty significant too. These abilities are going to hit pretty damn hard, to be honest. So I could see, you know, this is going to be like a great sword setup for Power Mirage. And guess what? They're also reworking this weird-ass trait that they've tried to make kind of do something for years and gave up, and now they're reworking it. So whenever you shatter with 2 or more clones, you're now going to get Mirage Cloak for free, which not only is an evade, but also that's going to give you more damage, right? I think it's pretty competitive in PvP, because I mean, oh man, I wonder if there's any universe where you'd actually want to run that in PvP as well on some kind of power build. I feel like it's pretty competitive because Mirage typically struggles with Condi Cleanse, and you'd have to give up the Condi Cleanse trait for this. Or, of course, you have to give up Infinite Horizon, which is also a little bit tricky in that regard. So, like, all of your clones kind of go crazy at the same time. In general, Infinite Horizon is actually really good, too. Because that means all of your clones are also going to go crazy. Oh, man. Like, well, dude, I was kind of coked out on this trait, but then I'm thinking, man, the other two are really good. Those are pretty good. Yeah, yeah, okay, maybe not then. But I do like that they are trying. It always sucks when one trait is just really behind the others and just doesn't really ever see play in any game mode. I think this is a pretty cool effect here. You know, you kind of go crazy. You know, dude, it's Dune Cloak. They should make it like a sandworm or something, because to celebrate the new Dune film that's coming out. That's topical right there, guys. But anyway, that's cool. I actually like that. Yeah, Power Mirage is actually a thing. This is good for me, by the way, because I always like to flame people and say, your build isn't bad, you are bad. But then someone says, ooh, I main Mirage. Guys, I main Mirage. And I play Power Mirage, so my build sucks. But actually, they have a point. Power Mirage actually isn't that good in PvE. But now it is! Enjoy. Enjoy. And Power Virtuoso. Those are trying to make Power Virtuoso a little bit better in PvE. Which is definitely a build that it's not bad, but it's kind of a bit superseded by some other builds that exist. Like, namely, its own self, Condi Virtuoso. So They're making this a bit better with Sword of Decimation. This is going to do more bonus damage to Defiant targets, so it always does Omega DPS. Is this as good as the other abilities? Honestly, I've got no idea on the numbers. The nerds will figure it out, okay, if this is actually worth using. And Infinite Forge, this trait now refunds 2 blades after casting a Blade Song with 5 blades in addition to its previous effect. This is a good change because you're going to get free blades, but also a refund when you activate like a Mega one, which kind of rewards you for managing your resources well. The important thing here is that, bear in mind, on Power Virtuoso, you didn't really have a Grandmaster trait. You took the Bleeding one because it just gave you more blades, and that was like the only build. That was like the only thing that you could take, because like the other ones were just bad, pretty much. So Infinite Forge is now significantly better as a result of that. I think they're very much leaning into the Power Virtuoso build. This is an interesting theme here, by the way. We talked earlier about how Power Harbinger, they're making Power Harbinger a thing, but they're also making Power Virtuoso a little bit better, and they're also trying to make stuff like Deadeye a little bit better as well. And I think there's something going on here, and they're trying to make ranged power builds a thing. Ranged power builds kind of don't exist in Guild Wars 2 as of right now. Like, they're almost exclusively melee. And the really good ranged builds, or the builds that are really strong, it's usually Condi, right? Like, you know, you got your Scourges, you got your Condi Virtuosos, you got your Renegades, all that kind of stuff. What people typically go with for the ranged DPS option. Adding power there is actually pretty impactful. It's pretty important because that means that power, you know, so-called Condi bosses, that there's no such thing as a Condi boss, right? There's only ranged bosses, but these bosses won't be Condi bosses anymore. Finally, guys. Finally. At long last, my friends. People will not say things are Condi bosses. They'll correctly identify that it's ranged versus melee bosses instead. I love it. Fantastic. Yeah, honestly, pretty cool changes. I like this. Some fun stuff for Mesmer here as well, and I think nerfing the support build is definitely good. I think ArenaNet are going to be keeping an eye on the boon thing, because of course they are removing some of the boon removal here. I think that's because they just want to reduce the overall power package of Chrono to make it less oppressive in the world versus world meta. I think that's going to be their goal here, with also the nerfs to the boon removal. But I think they'll definitely keep an eye on it. Maybe other things are going to get more boon removal. Maybe application. I think I'd rather see application go down rather than boon strips go up. And I think ArenaNet agree with that as well, actually. Yeah, I think ArenaNet agree with that philosophy, if judging by what they want. I think they want to reduce application rather than increase the amount of strips, because I think it can get a little bit out of hand when you've got like this crazy boon spam and you've got to counter it with crazy boon rip. It's a bit healthier if everything goes down a little bit, especially in world versus world, I think. So yeah, I think makes sense to me. Makes a little bit of sense to me. Similar vein there, we'll kind of do the world versus world stuff first here for Scourge. Heal Scourge in PvE, nobody panic, don't worry, it's just for world versus world. Serpent Siphon cooldown going up by 50%. Sandstorm Shroud another 5 second on the cooldown. Sand Cascade cooldown going up by 50%. Oh, dude, 18 seconds in world versus world, my god. That is actually wild. And Desert of Empowerment, this is, well, yeah, this is the Alacrity trait. It now gives Vigor instead of Alacrity in PvP in World vs. World. Yeah, ouch. Holy shit. Man, this feels kind of brutal, to be honest. Like, Alacrity uptime obviously really strong in World vs. World. Yeah, goodbye. That is not gone. And the cooldowns are going up massively? Man, whew. This is pretty aggressive, right? Because bear in mind, you're not going to have Alacrity on yourself either. So these cooldown nerfs are actually more aggressive than you think. Like, I feel like ArenaNet kind of want to get rid of this build a little bit. Because they already nerfed Transfusion to have a minute cooldown in World vs. World. And now they're basically adding 50% to the other cooldowns as well. For support. And removing the Alacrity. Oof. I mean, man. Like, I'm not going to lie. If this build still exists after this, then, I mean, yeah, that just tells you how bad it really was. But I feel like this has got to solve the issue. This is really absolutely massive nerfs. Like, surely the other supports are better than this, right? Like, in PvP. Like, the barrier is obviously really good. And to give a bit of context here, in World vs. World, there's a lot of grumbling and rumbling, quite rightly so, about the meta being very sustainy, right? Like, you know, It's not uncommon right now. I've been playing a fair bit of World versus World, and sometimes when you're in the squad, you literally like stand on each other and just nuke. It's like Chinese GVG. Another fun reference there. This is really cool. On the Chinese server, the meta for GVG is the groups like literally stand in each other and don't move and just like mash. And it's like a battle of attrition on who manages their cooldowns better. It's super interesting. But that was a while ago. Maybe the meta's changed, but yeah, that's the Chinese GVG meta guys right there. But yeah, cooldown on transfusions got up massively. Now the cooldown on every one of their good skills is going up massively as well. Ouch. Brutal stuff. And here we have some other kind of just minor little tweaks. Some of these other abilities here as well. So Sickness of Suffering kind of got made into a pretty lame trait. It's now gonna steal life in addition to removing a boon from enemies they strike. I need to quickly... Where is this? This is it's a spite trait. It's Master Major. The build I would think you could use this is like Power Necro in PvP. Because what you can do with that build is you run Signet of Spite on Power Necro, and you just blast people with condies and then nuke them with Shroud abilities pretty quickly. Like, that is some potential there. Like, there's some decent competition in this line here, to be honest, because that's with Awaken the Pain. So you get even more, you get more power from your Might, and you get Might when you go into Shroud to start blasting people. So there is some competition, but if the numbers are good, there's maybe some potential there for that. But it's only for one Signet, really. I don't know. Maybe. Whatever. Maybe I'm coping there, but yeah, like, I think there's only like one player who actually plays that build anyway, okay? Based. Plague Signet. Oh, you know, I'm actually a little bit sad about this one. This skill no longer passively transfers conditions to nearby allies to the user, and instead grants reduced incoming condition damage to the user. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this is definitely better because, you know, this was a bit grief sometimes. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna transfer slow and immobilize to myself. You can even transfer fear, I think, as well, which is... You know, okay, to your own self, which is a bit annoying. But that was kind of like a really iconic piece of flavor. You know, I still remember going into Wing 2 on Matthias, and everyone's playing Necro, and you're transferring the Condies from Matthias, because Condi Cleanse was way weaker back then in PvE. And, you know, it's like, oh man, you know, we've got to have Necros to eat the Condies and send them onto Matthias, or we're going to tick out to the poison, right? All this kind of crazy stuff. It was a really iconic ability, I feel like, for Necro, and it's kind of going there in a way, which does make me a little bit sad. I will admit that, to be honest. But hey, at the end of the day, I guess they wanted to make this a bit more usable, a bit more consistent in competitive. It did seem like in competitive, by the way. That was with the old, that was like the old school Condi Reaper build, by the way. When Signets of Suffering corrupted 2 boons and reduced cooldowns, like you played Vamp Signet, Locust Signet, and Plague Signet. It was like that was a classic build. What a build, guys. That was fun. That was back when the game was good, okay? Back in my day, when video games were actually high tier. Some old man moment there. But yeah, like, it's a very good skill, right? Like, it's a stun break, and it transfers 5 condies. It's an insanely good ability. And reduced condition damage as well. It's probably going to be 10%, I would say. It's nothing to be sniffed at there as well, for sure. And Well of Power, the cooldown is being reduced. And yeah, this is not a very good skill, and they're reducing the cooldown to make it a little bit better. Nice. We love to see that. I mean, do we love to see that? I feel like we love to see that. Harbinger. Power Harb. Here we go. It's happening, guys. It is happening. And I think these changes are lined up with the sword changes as well. I think, because bear in mind, this patch is not coming till March. We're getting the new weapons basically in what, like 10 days from now? On the 27th, probably. Not confirmed yet, but that's the guesstimate that we have as of right now. So I think they're thinking about sword attached to this as well, but Wicked Corruption, this is the adept trait that gives you more damage for a Sack of Blight, so it's 1%, they're doubling the effectiveness of that, so very significant DPS increase for power builds, and you get more critical strike damage modification from 10 to 12.5% in PvE only, and Cascading Corruption, this is the Grandmaster little proc that when you're in Shroud, you pulse out damage. That's going up to 1.5 power coefficient every 3 seconds from 1.0, which of course will be modified by Wicked Corruption. Now, what do these numbers come to? Power Harb is pretty bad right now, but I imagine this will make it a hell of a lot better, especially seeing as there's actually going to be a good ranged auto attack that exists with Sword coming up as well. So it's going to be like Sword, Greatsword, Power Harbinger. And in general, ArenaNet are usually fairly deliberate with their numbers. I imagine this makes it turn out pretty okay. And you know what's kind of interesting? It's going to be Power Harbinger, which even though you do have a low vitality pool because you obviously like reduce your health significantly by having Blight, you still heal yourself a fair bit. Swords will heal you a little bit. You're going to be ranged. Yeah, that's actually got some potential, I think. Ranged DPS power build, Harbinger, actually pretty cool, I think. This can definitely work. And another little one here too, Vile Vials. This trait now causes Elixir skills to grant protection. This protection can be shared with Twisted Medicine. This is actually a surprisingly cool trait because Condi Harbinger and Condi Quickness Harbinger does a lot of damage actually. But of course it's very aggressive, doesn't have a lot of defensive boons. What's interesting about this though, is that this allows you to say, okay, well, I'm going to sack a bit of my damage because we need some protection uptime on a group. Maybe you've got a healer that doesn't have the best protection uptime in the universe, and you could sack some of your own damage to increase the protection uptime on your group. That's kind of an actually, yeah, that's a pretty interesting trait choice. I think that's, in a way, kind of like the exact type of trait choice that you want. You can trade some damage for a little bit of support. Will you end up using that very often? Probably not, to be honest, because if you're playing Harbinger in PvE, you're usually going for a very aggressive squad composition a lot of the time, but it will be nice to have that option that you can kind of lean into that if you want to with Harbinger. But yeah, Power Harbinger, here it is. You know, I was kind of hoping they would just remove those traits and replace them with something else, but hey, you know, I think a lot of people want Power Harbinger. Now you're gonna get them, guys. You're gonna get your Power Harbingers. Enjoy. Embrace it. Ranger. A couple of reworks here. Again, we can do the world versus world stuff first here. Of course, Druid, also one of those kind of new rising supports that popped up in PvP. And that is being nerfed. No alacrity on Grace of the Land in World vs. World in PvP. It's going back to Might. And also Glyph of the Stars. Cooldown is going up to 60 seconds in World vs. World in PvP rather. And it reduces the number of Condi cleanse from 2 to 1 in World vs. World in PvE. And the revive speed from 12 to 8% in World vs. World. Again, just trying to tone down the power of these new supports they added to the game. Because, again, it was turning into a bit of a fiesta in World versus World there. This definitely makes a lot of sense. Again, I think I said this before, but I'll say it just in case I didn't. In my opinion, quickness and alacrity basically have no place in competitive modes with any remotely high uptime. If you've got like low uptime, you know, you're landing you're going for a mega burst and you get like a couple of seconds of quickness, that is absolutely fine, I think. Or maybe you can give yourself a little bit of alacrity to help your cooldowns and get it back, like a little bit of alacrity to help out the team. That's good. But if you're getting anywhere, even remotely decent uptimes on alacrity and quickness in World vs. World and PvP, that is absolutely awful for the game. It's just not fun, extremely bad. Honestly, I'd argue the same in PvE as well, but I mean, that ship has sailed a long time ago. Some hammer buffs for Ranger in PvP. And I think this is actually kind of preparing for the playstyle they want for maces. There's a couple of changes here and there that kind of imply this, right? Like, that, I think they want you to have, you know, hammer, and then you've got a mace offhand, and you're using the new carnivore trait in Wilderness Survival that's going into the Grandmaster. Empathic Bond is moving to Master. So in other words, you can either pick Condi Cleanse from the Master with Empathic Bond, or go for the Wilderness Survival Grandmaster that says whenever you use a survival skill, you remove 2 conditions, because again, that's a classic combo. Going with the on heal, you drop Muddy Terrain, and also the on survival use, you cleanse Condis. Absolute classic Ranger combo, Ranger technology there, guys. Mega Condi cleanse. But now you can have it on Empathic Bond, so when you swap your pet, you cleanse Condis, and take Carnivore instead, which is kind of a Brawler Bruiser style trait, which kind of fits with Wilderness Survival, right? You heal when you have protection in Wilderness Survival. You've got access to Condi Cleanse as well, whenever you dodge and stuff like that. So there's a lot of tools in Wilderness Survival that can help you live and be a bit of a brawler, a bit of a kind of a tanky beast. And this is going to be that. The steal health from enemies when you disable your enemies, or your pet does. And guess what? Hammer and Mace do. Oh yeah, Hammer and Mace do exactly that. So they're kind of envisioning this Hammer, Mace Ranger smashing into battle, right? With the, going crazy, getting massive with the Nature's, what is it? Like the Nature's Fury or whatever. I can't remember what it's called, guys, okay? I don't remember this stuff, okay? It is what it is, okay? The abilities, the things. Force of nature, that's what it's called. Boom, I can remember. But that's the deal going on there. You've got your hammer buffs. It's crazy stuff. Healing Spring did get nerfed down, and this is actually to kind of deal with some of the more bunkery style builds that have been existing in PvP. And having that water filled up for a long time, being able to resustain yourself so effectively while also massively cleansing condies, like 10 conditions pretty much over 10 seconds, was very, very strong. So the duration is going down to 5 seconds, and the number of condies going down from 2 to 1 in World vs. World and PvP. Pretty sensible change there overall. I think in PvE, it's arguably, it's very situational in PvE. Sometimes if you've got a lot of condies, like, you know, a boss corrupts you or something, or a boss applies a lot of conditions to you, then being able to remove them really quickly and increasing the pulse speed will actually be good, because you're still cleansing 2 condies every pulse in PvE, so that can be quite powerful there. But kind of a side grade, because sometimes it's like slow condies being applied, and, you know, you want the cleanse to be a bit more spread out, right? The water field a little bit less relevant, though, in PvE, obviously. And then finally, we've got Refined Toxins. This trait is just gone. It is just deleted. You just had that kind of constant poison application happening in competitive modes, which is pretty damn impressive, actually. And this is just gone now, been replaced by Survival Instincts again, trying to get rid of this passive gameplay, making it more like you have to use the more active poison trait from the Grandmaster area there instead, to kind of have that consistent poison application, or land weapon skills and so on, which Ranger is definitely, it's in no short supply, believe me. Gain increased outgoing strike damage and reduced incoming strike damage. Increased outgoing strike damage while above 50% health, and gain increased strike damage reduction when below 50% health. So in other words, you always have more damage and less incoming damage, and if you're low, you take even less damage, and if you're high, you're doing more damage. Again, this is one you're going to take with Carnivore for that kind of brawler playstyle that could exist. And builds like that can definitely exist for Ranger, right? Like, Ranger historically has had plenty of builds that can hold their own in 1v1s and have this kind of more brawler, even like melee-oriented playstyle, right? Utilizing stuff like Warhorn, Axe, and Greatsword, right? These kind of shorter range weapons, more brawl-oriented weapons with that one. But yeah, there you go. And finally, some Untamed memes. Unleashed ambush skills will no longer be automatically used when auto attack is enabled. That's actually quite a nice, that's a very nice quality of life. It was very easy to automatically waste your ambush skill. They actually said that they would think about adding this to Mirage as well. I think some of this could potentially make rotations a bit weird in PvE, but certainly for competitive modes, like accidentally using your ambush, very frustrating sometimes, I think, in a lot of situations. So that will probably help out some quality of life there. And then Unnatural Traversal. This skill now grants quickness instead of might, increases the vulnerability stacks applied from 2 to 10. So the big one here with this is that they want to make it a bit easier to kind of connect your abilities. They added a cast time to this to prevent Rangers from teleporting onto you and one-shotting you. But of course, that is a massive nerf, right? So they're adding quickness back to it to try and make it a little bit more fluid. So you can use this ability, you can leap on someone, you can bash them with a greatsword or something. You can bash them with some kind of weapon, and hopefully that works out pretty well for you. In that regard, for Untamed, very exciting stuff. All right, next up it's Revenant, and actually we've got some pretty damn big stuff here, actually. The big one is a big rework to color, right? And there's some interesting stuff going on here. They say that they want to make it a bit better in competitive without it being oppressive, and that's why they reworked it. And that definitely does make a lot of sense, right? A lot of there were like pulsing AoEs, massive pulsing AoEs that you could put down. Genuinely not a very good idea for that to be good in PvP, and I would be a little bit careful here. I'm a little bit scared of stuff like this, to be honest, because does everything have to be good in every game mode? I guess you can rework it to make it make a bit more sense in every game mode, but I don't know. I think it's kind of okay to say, you know what, this is fine in PvE, but we're just going to make it pretty bad in PvP. But I guess ArenaNet want to try to make sure as much stuff as possible is viable, I suppose, which is, that's fair enough, I guess. Yeah, but the other legendary skills have all been adjusted to have a more immediate impact, granting an immediate effect on summon and having quicker secondary skills instead of long channels. Here's the deal. This is a cross between the Ventari tablet and Ranger spirits. So you summon your little guy, they do a spell, And then they also have like a follow-up ability that they use after that. It might pulse something, it might do a special attack, right, or whatever. And the Ventari component is that when you use one warband member, the next utility skill you do is instant, right? So you can like, bam, it's like very snappy. And it has a bonus effect. It has like an empowered effect as well. In that regard. And we've seen some of these abilities. It's hard to gauge it right now, but I'm not gonna lie, it feels like a nerf in terms of utility, but the damage might work out. For example, Razor Claw's Rage is gonna give bleeding. It's like a venom now. You put it down, it applies like a venom on people that makes their attacks apply bleeding, and if you empower it, you're gonna get Torment, right? All that kind of stuff. Ice Razor's Ire, this one it used to apply vulnerability, now it just applies vulnerability. If it's empowered, it will apply Torment, Vulnerability, and Immobilize. And if it's empowered, then you also get Chill as well on those projectiles too. Dark Razor's Daring, you're going to give AoE protection, still a stun break of course, and then it will daze AoE targets. And you also give resistance if it's enhanced. Pretty powerful effect there. And then Break Razor's Bastion gives resolution to nearby allies, which is kind of similar to its original effect. Right now it's a 50% reduction in combi damage. It's going to be 33% after that. And then it will do a heal, just a little AoE heal. So kind of very similar to me. I was like, very similar to this one. And it gives barrier if it's enhanced. So it gives some barrier access to Heal Renegade. Right out the bat. Do I think Heal Renegade is good with this? Not gonna lie, probably not. I think it's not even close, actually, to being on par with the other healers. So even if this ends up better, I don't think it will actually help that much. So GG, unlucky. With that one. The other stuff is interesting. I think it could definitely work out for the DPS builds. You can kind of chain these two together, Razor Claws and Ice Razor's Ire, and get some very heavy damage output with the Torment. I think, though, we'll have to see what the daze duration is in PvE, but this skill was sick, right? Because it pulsed days, very short days, but of course in PvE, that actually is the same as 100 Defiance Bar. The minimum Defiance Bar damage you can do is 100, so this ability was actually sick. If the number is not basically like 6 seconds, that's going to be kind of a utility loss, a little bit anyway, in PvE. So, yeah, I don't know. Could work out well, I think. I'm not sure I have much of a take on, like, the... Is this less interesting? Because I'd like to remind everyone that Renegade spells, utility skills, were just wells that had an NPC casting them. That's all they were. And they even removed them from being CCable in PvE anyway. They would just die instantly in World versus World and kind of like just be annoying in PvP. So I would argue this design is actually a bit more exciting, like chaining them together, and they have like a secondary effect, and the actual NPC, like, you know, the char you've summoned actually does something. It's maybe a little bit more interesting overall. However, I'm a little bit disturbed, to be honest, with this. Like, this is like an AoE large radius daze in PvP. I guess it's not quite as annoying as a pulsing one, but this one here, like AoE immobilize. On a very large radius. I mean, this is kind of annoying. I'm not gonna lie. Like, you know, I know that ArenaNet want to kind of, you know, they want to make Renegade good, but honestly, maybe I'm not sure a Renegade should be good. You know, maybe Renegade doesn't deserve to be good in PvP. Like, you know, what kind of horror might be about to befall us in that game mode? Who knows? Anyway. The final one we didn't look at yet is Soul Cleave, and it's pretty similar, actually. Because of it's a channel skill, they didn't make it have an empower or anything like that, because that would be weird. You just, like, spam it or something, and yeah, how would you empower a channel effect? It's kind of unusual, right? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. But anyway, what this one does is now, whenever you summon one of the other warband members, it will do AoE damage and also heal nearby allies. So very much in the same vein as its current effect, right? Kind of like a lifesteal effect almost. Except that lifesteal gets shared around to everyone else. It's also a lot snappier too. 1 second to 0.5 second cast time, and also the energy cost goes down from 10 to 5, which definitely is nice, right? Like the cast time in this, whenever I played Renegade, it's always been like, man, this is a very painful, very, very painful skill to use, isn't it? And it's got less upkeep as well. So, I don't know. I don't actually want to judge this one too soon. They showed us a couple of numbers in the PvP lobby. We haven't seen them in PvE yet. I want to actually play with this to see how it actually feels. I think it could end up being better. Could end up being a menace in PvP. It doesn't really enable Heal Renegade, in my opinion, to be honest. It's just no. Like, the other healers are way too good for it to enable that effectively. But yeah, that's the Renegade rework. Enjoy. All right, and then we've got the world versus world stuff. This is a hilarious Smiter's Boon change. So energy expulsion, this is when you detonate your tablet. It gave stability and resistance, thanks to Serene Rejuvenation. And it was basically spammable. And guess what people did? Yeah, that's right. They were just spamming it like crazy, cleansing condies like crazy, giving stability and resistance like crazy. And so it's got a 15-second cooldown in world versus world instead of 2. Because basically what you can do is, right, you put the tablet down, blow it up, resummon it, rinse and repeat. And, oh yeah, that's pretty interesting, isn't it? And the resistance duration is going down as well from energy expulsion thanks to Serene Rejuvenation. So yeah, again, just nerfs to the heal Revenant build, specifically heal Vindicator is going to be the one that they're trying to nerf there. They did this with the Caracosa Relic already, and now they're doing it with some changes to Ventari. Makes a lot of sense, to be honest. Kind of a degen build, kind of a fetid, disgusting build that was, you know, existing in the meta there. Not ideal, to be honest. So well-deserved change here, I would say. Drop the Hammer. This skill has a shorter casting time to summon the hammer, which strikes after a delay. This is a very, very slow, unwieldy ability, so certainly good for them to change that as well. And it even has a little combo effect where it's going to reset your hammer too at the same time. I think it's always nice when abilities have interactions like that, kind of that combo feeling that you get, so this is good. And bear in mind, hammer is a very mediocre weapon outside of basically world versus world, so anything that kind of makes it a bit more interactive, a bit more fun to play, a little bit stronger, I think is always going to be a pretty good change in that regard. And yeah, oh, I'm almost sad to see this one go as well. Look at this. Look what they did to it, guys. This skill no longer extends boons on allies. Oh, man. No more boon extension. No more Imperial Impact. Increase the protection duration from 4 to 5 seconds in PvE and from 0.5 seconds to 2 seconds in PvP in World versus World. You see, there's a reason why they want to get rid of the boon extension. Like, even though it is a fun mechanic and stuff like that, is actually really cool, I think. Having it on the dodge and as spammable as it is, oh man, it's a recipe for disaster, right? They had to nerf it so hard in PvP. 0.5 seconds of proc, guys, in PvP in World versus World. That's how insane stuff like this is, when you are able to spam boon extension that hard. And that's after they nerfed all of the endurance gain and, like, dodge spam that existed in World vs. World and PvP 2. Like, that's after that. They had to go even further and just make it completely dumpstered, right? So they've reconsidered the design here to make it a little bit more feasible. It's just might and proc now to nearby allies. In PvE, it's really going to struggle to find its place. It's one of those builds that I really wanted to be kind of cool, like some kind of hybrid boon-giving half DPS build. You know, it probably would have existed. Like, there would have been this really interesting hybrid DPS quickness build on Vindicator, I think, but it would have need to have given quickness or alacrity, right? Which, of course, it does not have the ability to do. So, yeah, there you have it. It's a sad, but to be honest, stuff like this, it's out of control. And actually, you know, this is some food for thought for everyone, actually. Here's some food for thought. Like, there's a couple of changes here that I feel like they have stripped away some of the flavor of some of these abilities. They've definitely normalized a lot of things. I wouldn't say homogenized, because that's not really true. I think they definitely play out very differently. But they've certainly normalized a lot of the effects. There's less kind of, like, wacky stuff going on with some of these abilities, I think. And there's something to think about. Like, what do we think about that? I don't know. I'd have to think about it myself, actually. Like, because you do have to have a little bit of give and take here. If you want to have a perfectly balanced game, you're going to have to rein in some of the crazy stuff. You're going to have to rein in some of the really, really out there effects, because they're just going to be they're just going to be game breaking in some ways anyway. But I don't know. That's food for thought, gamers. A little bit of food for thought. Coming up to Thief, and oh boy, I feel like the Thief mains are going to be happy. Deadly Aim. Guys, you don't lose damage for taking a trait now. I don't believe it. That's insane. Oh man, that's funny. That is very, very funny. We have our complementary acrobatics buffs. Watch out for this, guys. You know, they buffed Firebrand for like a year straight, then it eventually became good. Maybe that will happen with acrobatics. We'll find out. But here's the fun stuff. We've got some really cool changes for Thief, especially in PvE, but definitely in other game modes too as well, of course. Double tap, 3-round burst. Pierce. Yep. AoE on rifle. Keen Observer, your extra crit chance when you're over 50% health now instead of 75, way more consistent. Twin Fangs, extra critical strike chance and damage, while over 90, going to 50%. And they're buffing it. You get more you just get you get base critical strike damage that is increased above the head rush. So you even more crit damage on Thief, just like a straight buff there as well. And it's way more consistent. Then we go over here to Havoc Specialist. You don't have to spam all your dodges. You have a flat damage bonus of 15% when your endurance is not full in PvE. Boom! Lovely quality of life. You don't have to burn all of your dodges on Daredevil now. And you don't get grief by people giving you Vigor nearly as hard in PvE on Daredevil. Really nice quality of life. Deadeye. Stolen skills, damage goes up. Overall damage buff to Deadeye, but really focuses on the quickness build. We kind of thought ArenaNet forget about this because, well, you know, they just kind of nerfed it and then just didn't do anything with it for ages. Big damage increase to the quickness build that loves to spam that Deadeye stolen skill. One in the chamber. Damage goes up again. On the stolen skill, right? Like, boom, 25% more damage there as well. And this is, of course, part of the quickness build. Mercy, this is a quality of life change, right? So one of the things, and this is true for Shadow Meld too, one of the things that really sucks on Deadeye, if you get revealed, it's over. If you, if your target dies and you lose your Deadeye's mark, you don't have it for your next target, G. You're worthless. So adding an extra ammo count to Mercy, adding Shadow Meld's cooldown going down to 25 seconds. If you get revealed, you don't get fucked as hard. If you lose your target and your target dies, you don't get fucked as hard. Really intelligent quality of life for Deadeye in general, which is definitely one of the specs that struggles with quality of life the most when it comes to its play rate. Alongside some pretty nifty buffs across the board. I'm definitely liking these Thief changes. I absolutely am. And a PvP change as well. Shadow Portal. Thief is always good in PvP. One of the issues that Thief kind of presents right now is that it has Shadow Portal, which is a super good ability for PvP. Just for those who don't know, it's basically like Mesmer Portal, but one way. So you can put down a little portal, and then you can open it, and you can go one way through that portal, or an ally can take it as well. Now, what you can also do is you can use it as a get-out-of-jail-free card, and that's one of the things that's trying to be addressed here. So Shadow Portal is no longer going to be a stun break. So previously, what it would do is you could use it as an extra stun break, but not necessarily take the portal. And they may go further with this. If they feel the need to, in my opinion. But what they want you to do right now is that you cannot use Shadow Portal just as a stun break. You can still use it to escape because you can open the portal while stunned and then take the portal away and disengage. But you do not get another free stun break in combat. You're going to have to decide, am I going to eat this stun and not stun break? Or am I going to open the portal and disengage? Right? And that's a good start, I think, because in general, Thief can be really, really slippery, especially if it's Deadeye, especially if it's Daredevil, especially if the Shadow Art's involved. Toning down that slipperiness to kind of make the Thief force them to engage in combat or disengage and like actually stay out of the fight for a prolonged period of time, that is actually what you want to see for Thief, in my opinion. So I think some very, very solid changes for Thief overall for both PvE and PvP. I think the Thief mains, they're going to have fun with this. They're going to enjoy this. We absolutely love to see that, guys. Fantastic stuff. And here we go, guys. Finally, you know, look, the Warrior stuff, they're buffing a bit in PvP, and Warrior's fallen off a little bit in PvP. Like the Spellbreaker build in particular, I think. It obviously still exists. Like, you can't ever get rid of Spellbreaker. It's always there. But who cares about that? Guys, Rush. This skill now tracks moving targets better. Have they fixed it? I guess we'll find out on the day, but for those who don't know, Rush is one of the weirdest and most inconsistent spells in the history of Guild Wars 2. It will just randomly lurch all over the place sometimes and just it be bizarre and not connect very well sometimes. It's just weird. They have fixed it. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. I think some of this technology kind of went into the elite spec weapons too. I think some of those weapons had some issues with tracking, especially when dealing with projectiles and movement skills. So I think they've probably done some kind of behind the scenes work to make skills that are like this work a little bit better overall, in general, I think, which is pretty interesting. Overall. And then finally, we have a Berserker change. And this is a pretty exciting one, actually, for the direction of the game. Wild Blow is unblockable and dazes instead of knocks you down. And the power coefficient's going up in PvP and World vs. World. We've seen a couple of abilities CC skills start to get damage back in PvP and World vs. World. And it looks like ArenaNet do actually want to continue to do that a little bit here as well. Most notably here, they want this to be kind of like a bunker buster. Let's say you're dueling versus something like a ranger that has a block on greatsword, or mace. I think mace has a block on the offhand, right? You'll now be able to circumvent that by using Wild Blow and CC them through it, or like a Revenant or something, right? You can just, boom, whack them. Or another warrior who's using shield, right? Like, boom, you can punch through that and go. I think stuff like this is actually pretty cool, right? I think you got to be a little bit careful with unblockable. But having some counterplay that can break through defensives and you can use it as like a quick combo to really eliminate someone when they're trying to recuperate, when they're trying to, you know, defend themselves, I think some of that's actually pretty cool. I'll be interested to see how that plays out. I feel like on Berserker, you might be able to fit abilities in like this as well. I think sometimes like you've had stuff like Sundering Leap exist, and there's a bit of flexibility on Berserker, Berserker skills in PvP, like some kind of, you know, the Duelist build, like the Condi build. Like, I could imagine there's some universe where stuff like this could actually creep in. A couple of damage buffs as well to some of the primal bursts. I don't think these really see a lot of play. Skull Grinder does, obviously, but for its condition damage rather than for its power damage. But hey, I mean, more power damage is never gonna go amiss on any kind of build. More damage is always gonna be good stuff there. Wow. And there you have it. We have got through the balance preview for March, guys. We absolutely have. What an exciting journey. What an epic journey. Pretty chill stuff. I mean, you know, I don't know what to think about this. I feel like it's a fairly relaxed balance patch. I think we've seen more explosive things. You know, but you know, there's a lot going on there. I think there's some solid changes, but maybe a little bit more cautious in some areas than others. I think a lot of the work definitely went into making sure that world versus world supports don't get out of hand, and it's quite split. I think sometimes we see like a very heavy focus on PvE, a very heavy focus on PvP, or a very heavy focus on world versus world. I thought this is like everyone's getting a little bit of something. It's quite, you know, it's quite well divided, if that makes any sense. Like a lot of changes kind of all over the place. Maybe a little bit less towards PvE even than I'd normally expect from a balance patch, but I think the world versus world stuff is important right now because of how disrupted the meta has become with the introduction of the new support. So I definitely approve of that stuff. Overall, I think this is a pretty damn solid patch. Obviously, there's an infinite series of more issues that can be addressed, so you should definitely complain about them. Not only on the official forums, but also in my YouTube comments. We absolutely love to see that. But anyway, that's going to do it for now. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe. Okay, follow me on Twitch. Follow me on Twitter. Okay, watch the stream live on YouTube. Watch the stream live on Twitch. Join the channel. Subscribe with Twitch Prime. Join the Patreon. Join my Discord. You guys know what's going on there. You know what the hell this is, okay? Come on. Come on, guys. You know what's going on. But anyway, that's going to do it. Hope you enjoyed this video. More content to come. We're going to be going over the new weapon stuff soon. We've got memes. We've got it all. But anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching, YouTube. I'll see you next time.